So this is a nest of a harvester ant, a Florida harvester ant, Pogonomyrmex badius. And this is a species that we've been studying for many years, but the colonies make a new nest about at least once a year. And they never move far from their old site, but they do move annually. So what we've done here is this colony finished moving about 4 days ago, 5 days ago at the most, and we made a cast of the vacated nest using molten aluminum. That's something we've made a video of before, and the hole that we dug to get it out is this hole here. What we're going to do today is to excavate the living colony and capture all the ants in order to census them. And then as we expose each layer of chambers, we will put a sheet of acetate over it and draw the outlines. So we'll have a record in 3 dimensions of the entire nest structure, plus the ants that were in each chamber and whatever other contents were in the chamber. So it's a complete census of a harvester ant colony. And the purpose of this video is to show how we do this and to hope that other people will also apply it and study this very interesting species. The tools that we use for this excavation are quite simple. It's a shovel, but it has to be a short-handled one because you can't swing a long-handled shovel in a narrow hole. A trowel for lifting soil off the top, and the most prized tool of all, a good quality shop vacuum cleaner that's battery powered. This turns out to be not only an excellent way to collect the ants, they do sting, but also an excellent way to expose chambers and to make it all nice and clean. But we'll see that as we go along. Okay. All right. Normally, we would dig this hole. If we hadn't already removed the cast here, we would dig a pit next to the nest in order to work down through the layers. But since we already have a pit, I'm going to work from the pit. So the first thing we do is to collect all the ants that are walking around on the surface. Most of these, of course, are excavators. You can see they're carrying dirt up out of the nest. So we're going to enlarge the hole so that we're at the edge of the nest, because typically the largest chambers are just about the same as the disc or a little bit further out. I can see an opening here, so I'd probably go at least this far. So it's easier to work close to the nest, so we're going to excavate this a bit more. Alright, so now the first thing I'm going to do is to take away this loose soil here and try to expose the uppermost chambers, which will be probably fairly extensive, but because they're in loose dry sand, they're also kind of hard to expose intact. So you can see almost all of this is just sand they've brought up. Later on, when the mound has been living here for a while, then they'll start to make chambers in the mound itself. But right now I think they're limited to what's below. So a chamber has appeared here, so we're going to try to expose it more completely with the vacuum. They've even brought some pupae up here, you can see, and there's one of the shafts going down. Okay, so you can see we've exposed the uppermost chambers here. They're just under the ground surface. And because they're warmer, they bring up brood. You saw some pupae that they had brought up. So anyway, this is a start. So, okay, we're ready to sketch the first chamber. So we take a piece of this acetate and we lay it over the nest, and we mark one corner with a flag so that we have a 0, 0 for the coordinates, and everything will be referenced to this flag, plus we will measure the depth. So this is 1 centimeter down. So in that way you can reconstruct the whole nest in 3 dimensions, at least the chambers. So here we go. Okay, so we're measuring the depth of the chambers so we can write it on the acetates. Keep track of all this. Alright, I use different colors so I can put multiple tracings on one acetate. Just to be frugal primarily. Well, this is the third layer of chambers. It's a depth of 5 centimeters, and I've traced it in green here. So we label it 5 centimeters. And then we collect the ants that are pouring out of here before we get stung. Okay, as you go down in the nest, both the abundance of the ants and the age mix changes. Usually the middle levels have the fewest ants. The oldest ants are near the surface. That's what we're collecting now. And the youngest ants, when you can recognize them because they're pale in color, brown or reddish light color. Those are usually mostly near the bottom of the nest. And that's also where most of the brood is, because it's care of the brood. So the whole nest is structured vertically by age, with the oldest at the top, the youngest at the bottom, and I presume a gradual movement upward as the ants age. If you look at this chamber here, you can see we've just exposed a nice, sort of a much less complex chamber than the ones above, and nice flat floor again, like 3 shafts going down. And once again you can see deposition of sand from deeper layers here, short of the surface. So when you begin to approach a chamber, you can see the roof often caves in, so you can see where the next chamber is going to be, and then you can just get the vacuum cleaner. So we've exposed the seed chamber here. There's a few seeds in this one side. When the ants have really when they store a lot of seeds in the chambers, then the chamber can be completely full of seeds, so that there's only just space for an ant to crawl between the top of the seeds and the ceiling. This over here is an empty chamber. This is from about 70 centimeters down, and you can see that we're beginning to see quite a bit of brood. Well, we're down to about a meter now. Chambers are getting smaller, and we're seeing more brood. So let's hope it's not too much deeper, but it could be up to a couple of meters. Okay, this is the bane of this kind of work. When the hole gets about 5 or 6 feet deep, and a lot of times the sides can cave in. And unfortunately, at that depth, you're usually near the bottom of the nest. So you end up moving another ton of soil for a couple of chambers. But those chambers usually have a queen and a large fraction of the brood. So it has to be done. So we just had a double collapse here. So on this joyous occasion, gotta dig it all out. Well, here we are. We've dug out all the way to the bottom of the nest. We're almost 2 meters. We found the bottom of the old nest, which was at about 2.2 meters. This one, the lowest ants were at 185 centimeters. And all this after 2 collapses and about, I don't know, 5 tons of dirt moved. Not too high a price to pay for such excellent data. So we have the entire population that built this nest, and we have a map of every chamber at every level. We have the outlines, and from this we can calculate the total area of chambers in the nest and the distribution in vertical space, because we also recorded the depth of each of these chambers. So we can do a complete analysis of the distribution of the workers of different ages at the different levels and chambers of the nest, and also the brood and the queen, and so on and so forth. At the same time, we also know what the old nest looked like, so we can compare the architecture, the same aspects, the distribution of area and size and shapes and so on of the chambers, with the new nest. And in that way, because we know that the colony moved about 4 days before we made the cast, so we know how quickly they build the new nest and all its features. And just from what we know already, just from the digging, they come very close to building a nest the size of the old one. This one was 185 centimeters deep. The old one was about 220 centimeters. We haven't estimated the area yet, but I expect that the new nest will have probably 80% of the chamber area of the old one. So we can extrapolate within a week or two, this colony would have built a nest identical to the old one, which kind of makes you ask, why do they move? They're going to build the same thing again. They're not moving upscale, they're just moving laterally. So that's an interesting question. All right, so the next step, just to be decent citizens, is first of all to empty your shoes of sand. The wife doesn't like it when I bring that home. And then we have to fill in the hole, obviously, as good citizens. And then, once we get back to the lab, we have to count all these ants and categorize them as to whether they're larvae or pupae and so on. And then finally, we take these maps that we made and we photograph them with a scale, and then using a digital imaging program we can estimate the area and the perimeter and all that kind of good stuff. And when we enter all that in the data file, we have that complete census plus architectural features that I said we were after.
So Dr. Schenkel, what are you doing right now?
I'm counting the ants. These are the ants that we dug up from the Colony 64, and they're bagged by level. So each chamber level is in a different bag. This one came from 12 centimeters down, and we count the number of dark workers, which are the older ones, and then the number of pale, brown workers, light workers. Those are the young ones. And in the lower chambers, there'll be brood, there'll be pupae and larvae, stuff like that. So we get a complete census on a vertical scale. I might put Henry to work doing this too. After all, this isn't rocket science. Okay, so we're down next to a scale that's 10 centimeters, and then we just take a picture of this whole outfit from directly above, and the scale allows us then to estimate the area on an image analysis program, also the perimeter and circularity and things of that nature. So we just photograph each one of these with the same scale. Doesn't matter if we zoom in or not because we have a scale. Hey, Nelson. Okay, that's it. These tracings with a program called ImageJ. It's a program you can get free from the web. I think it's a government program. And we simply start by setting the scale to 10 centimeters, which is what we used here. So there we are. And we set the scale to 10 centimeters. Okay, and then we click the tool that allows us to do areas and perimeters. So let's start with this one, and we just simply trace around it with the mouse. And when we're done, we measure it, and we have here the area. Well, I want more than the area. We're going to set measurements. We want the area, we want the circularity, and we want the perimeter. Okay, let me do it again. There, from now on it'll tell us all those. So then we do the next one. Alright, now we're going to do the red chamber. I'm just tracing around the perimeter with the mouse, and we've set the scale to be 10 centimeters. And then we hit Control M, and we have the measurement 45 square centimeters, perimeter 32, and circularity 0.556. Alright, so having measured all the chambers, measured the area, the perimeter, and the circularity, you can then enter those data in a statistical program and analyze the nest architecture by depth, area versus depth. If you've censused the colony, then you can also look at the density of workers at different depths, because you know the chamber areas and you know the location that the workers came from.
You can analyze the vertical distribution of brood, of pupae and larvae, and so on and so forth. So it's a fairly complete analysis of the nest architecture and the distribution of the ant colony within it. And if you do this through the seasons, then of course you also have a seasonal cycle. If you do it for a range of different colony sizes, then you have whatever changes occur during the development of the colony from small to large.